I think they kind of have a more cohesive relationship between the levels and the hub world itself. It all kind of feels more as like a singular concept, more so than Mario 64. During the transition to 3D gaming in the late 90s, the concept of a hub world was popularized. No longer would certain games use a simple level select screen, but instead a world of its own to explore before entering the stages of the game. What video game hub worlds were memorable and truly went above and beyond? We're here to talk about this on another exciting episode of A Cast of the Past, where you can catch an episode each and every Sunday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. So, joining me, of course, Keith Hamilton from London, Ontario. So, Keith,
that is true. That is where I currently reside.
I want to ask you first, when it comes to hub worlds, what elements are important to you?
I think the hub world is a thing, at least in my opinion, that connects the world together. There's a huge emphasis on the word world when it comes to hub world, where that is where everything kind of intertwines and makes a game feel like you're in its own world, it's in its own universe. It's one of my favorite things that happened in that 3D change, because no longer did games just kind of feel like a chain of levels that got put together. It's something that now feels like a connected experience.
That really immersion factor is definitely a big point of discussion, and I think that is kind of where the concept really kind of came from, because moving into a 3D space, it made sense to, hey, level select screens are great, and many games still use them, and sometimes, I think there's a time and a place for that in games.
I agree. Not every game needs a hub world, but the games that have it, I think, are way better for it.
Exactly. And I think every conversation really has to start when you're talking about hub worlds with Mario 64, because I'm sure the concept might have happened. I'm sure it happened before Mario 64, but
that is the first good one.
Yeah,
like when something might have existed before it, but until Peach's Castle came along in Mario 64, it was so good that it made all of those other examples totally worthless and not mean anything, and it just kind of took the title of the first one by default.
Absolutely. And when we think of Mario 64, you think of Peach's Castle. Not only was it a place where you could just enter the levels, but they added secrets. You jump through a window and you go to a slide level. You look up at the sun in the main hall and you go to this secret flying level where you can unlock your flying cap. It wasn't just, oh, hey, go here, go to a level. There were things to discover within the world itself. Even even just talking to a toad, sometimes you get a star. Other times you get more information. So it made the game. It's a game within a game almost.
Exactly.
It's not just about the levels.
It's what separated it from just being a list of levels, because, without the hub world, that's exactly what Mario 64 would be. And you could argue that this already existed in, Super Mario World, but it's a little different, I would say, just because there's, even though you had the Star World and stuff, it's a little different in Super Mario World. But the fact that you can go around and unlock progression in that hub world in Peach's Castle, and just kind of choose where you want to go as long as you've unlocked it. It's what really made Super Mario 64 feel more immersive. And honestly, I think it's a huge step of why it's such a revered game, of why that jump to 3D felt so substantial, because now it's more just you're no longer playing a bunch of levels as Mario, you're now playing as Mario. I think that's you can like solely give credit to that for the fact that that game had that hub world. Plus, I don't know about you, but every time somebody talks about the hub world in Mario 64, the song immediately starts playing in my head.
Oh, of course. The music, I think, played a huge part, for sure. That's just the rest of the episode.
Okay, I'm done now.
So, speaking of music, though, because talking about more, memorable, talking about we're the best hub worlds, most memorable hub worlds. Music, I think, played a huge part in Banjo-Kazooie. So I did a whole video on this on my personal channel, gameessays.com, if you want to see all the videos I've done.
You even got the non-YouTube URL. You're just gameessays.com. Everybody,
exactly.
If you're listening, go give that a follow. Ryan makes some good stuff over there.
Like and subscribe, hit that bell, all that stuff. And do that for this channel as well if you're listening on YouTube, listening/watching. Now, Banjo-Kazooie, I think atmosphere and music is what knocked it out of the park for this one. Now, Peach's Castle, obviously you're exploring a kind of more friendly environment, though Bowser's kind of taken over the castle. There's not really many, aside from the boos in like the back, there's not really any enemies to worry about, anything like that, until you actually enter a level. But in Banjo-Kazooie, you're in Gruntilda's lair, so it's the enemies, her place. So you will see enemies. Again, it's not like you're flooded with enemies, but there's a lot of theming. So if you're entering a pirate-themed level, there's kind of a level within a level. So you'll go down in the basement, and all of a sudden there's like sand, and there's a pirate ship, and you'll see this treasure chest open up, and that's the level. But the music of the layer will transform to something that sounds more like pirate theme. It's got like accordions and stuff going. Cool. And if you go to, there's a level like Click Clock Wood, it sounds more like, woodland and, more nature like and things like that. So I loved the theming that they did in Banjo-Kazooie and the dynamic music that's changing as you're going through it, and you're kind of, there's cool dynamic with that hub world where you go into a level and there's a switch. So you'll hit that switch, and then that opens up a Jiggy, which is the star equivalent in the hub world. So there's 10 even stars to get in the hub world, kind of like Mario 64, except I think they kind of have a more cohesive relationship between the levels and the hub world itself. It all kind of feels more as like a singular concept, more so than Mario 64. And I think, obviously the game takes heavy inspiration from Mario 64, but kind of does, I think it took the hub world concept to kind of evolved it even more so.
Yeah, that was the next point I wanted to bring up with a lot of early examples, especially in that N64 era. When you're talking about hub worlds in a game, it's almost exclusively 3D platformers, and then later on platformers in general. It was almost like there's this thing that accidentally happened of a game company's making a 3D platformer, and then in the design document they're like, well, Mario had a hub world, we need to have a hub world too, make that hub world. And there are a lot of examples of things that worked, like Banjo, given I haven't played the game, but just the way that you talk about it makes it sound like it's a very good example of that. But from that, just for the sake of having it, I think there are a couple bad examples of hub worlds that exist just because they felt like they needed to have one. I think a great example of that we covered earlier this year, and the episode's available in the archives, is Spyro the Dragon, where that game, even though like if you took out the hub world in that game, or the hub worlds, I don't think you would lose anything from that game, just because they added a layer of frustration into the hub worlds, into a point where, like, there's almost like a set of rules that exist in a level where, okay, you die, you go back to the beginning, you accept that, you do better next time. But when something like that happens in a hub world, it feels really bad. And that was something that I ran into a couple of times with Spyro. And it's one of those instances where I don't think it needed a hub world in it, and the game actually was worse for it.
Yeah, I honestly I didn't mind the hub world specifically in Spyro,
I
but
remember one specific point. It was in the desert level where I was going to the very end of it because there was like a secret dragon or something in there, and I fell into a cliff, and it put me right back at the beginning, and I had to go through that entire thing again just to try that jump again, and that felt bad. I was not a fan of that at all.
yeah, I can imagine certain yeah, when you die in the hub world that never necessarily feels good, and yeah, it can be a little annoying at times. I think jumping in particular was certain like platform jumps in that game were just kind of a problem in and of itself. But I see what you mean because in Spyro, it did feel like it was there just to be there. I did like that there were dragons to discover in the hub world, but it wasn't as
If you just threw those ones in a level, though, do you think
yeah, it
just
wouldn't make
because
a
they were
huge
there
difference.
it
Yeah, I
added
agree.
anything?
I don't think it hurt the game, but I don't think it did enough to it didn't do enough to maybe justify its existence. So I will definitely give you that. Quickly before we go into some of the other, hub worlds, because when we talk about hub worlds for the most part, it's something we don't see as often, partly because 3D platformers are not as big, or we just don't see as many come out. I mean, we still see plenty. We see more often almost 2D platformers coming out these days, but
Kind of, but the concept of the hub world has evolved beyond 3D platformers, I think, at this point, where it's being adapted in different ways than the traditional Peach's Castle and the stuff you saw in Banjo into current games these days.
yeah, I was gonna say something. A more modern example would probably be like a hub area, because you could look
Yes.
at Dark Souls, and I think more so in Dark Souls 3, which I haven't played, but everything I've seen from it is, it's a place you kind of return to kind of, recoup, get more story progress, things like that. Dark Souls 1,
Did you ever play the original Demon Souls?
I did not, but I know that very much so had a actual hub area,
Yes.
the Nexus.
Yeah. That's the point I was going to make.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so Firelink Shrine, at least in the first Dark Souls, it's more like a place you kind of find yourself coming back to for certain things, and I think that evolved even more so in Dark Souls 3. Now, one I do want to ask you about, because I did pull up a list, and maybe we can breeze through it towards the end of this episode to see if there's any hub worlds we missed. But one I saw just looking through kind of best hub world lists come up a lot was actually from Metal Gear Solid 5. And I know you being the big Metal Gear Solid guy, if there is it looked like some like cargo ship or something. What if you want to explain that?
Yeah. It does have a hub world in the way that you have your own base. You're setting up this mother base in the middle of the ocean, and you're slowly building it out and recruiting people to it towards the end game, and as you progress. So, by definition, yes, it's there, but it's an example of something that this is kind of Metal Gear Solid 5 in a nutshell, where it was a really cool idea and it has some really cool gameplay in there, but it's just not flushed out very well, where it very quickly becomes the place to go from A to B up until the very end, and then there's this point in the game where the hub world turns into one of the most dramatic missions in the entire game, and it's this brutal scene where you do not feel good doing the things you are doing, in that it's I won't spoil anything, because if you have not played Metal Gear Solid 5, I do think this is something worth seeing as far as like emotional moments in a video game, but it involves a base you are building with a bunch of your soldiers. It is emotional. I will let you fill in the rest of the blanks yourself. So it is something that has a lot of peaks and valleys, and I do think it's good that it's there, but it's not this like, oh my god, amazing thing. I don't know if I would put it on a best hub worlds list personally.
Good to know. Yeah, that was definitely one I was happy you could expand on more, because I was interested. It's a more modern game, and to see how they kind of transform that
forgot
concept.
About that mission. Oh, that sucks. I never want to think one that again. Oh, it's bad.
I have a lot of catching
like
up
the
to do.
Emotional wrecking kind of way.
In the Metal Gear Solid world.
One day, I will make you play all of them on this episode, the same way that I am playing all of these Zelda games now.
Yep, exactly. I mean, that's the purpose of this podcast in a lot of ways, is to catch up on those things. So a few quick ones before I think we bring up the best modern edition, and I think you know exactly what game I'm talking about, but
I hope I do.
Yeah. So Diddy Kong Racing is a game where racing games, you don't typically see a hub world, and I thought that was a cool thing for them to do.
I've never played Diddy Kong Racing and didn't know that existed, but that's a cool thing because you don't think about it.
Yeah, so I loved it because in Diddy Kong Racing, you're not just using a car or whatever, but you have things like a hovercraft and an airplane, and when you're in the hub worlds, you can actually go up to a character that will let you change your vehicle. So if you want to like get the hang of flying in a plane, you can fly around the whole hub worlds in the plane and kind of get used to it. And again, like Banjo-Kazooie, Rare love doing this. When you go through certain areas, the music will kind of change a little bit. And it was really fun. And I remember as a kid renting this game, and I'd spend a lot of time just in the plane flying around the hub worlds, just having fun, like going through like a log tunnel and things like that. And
has Rare ever made a bad hub world? Thinking about their library?
I would have to really think about that, because I haven't played all their games, and because they have a game like Jet Force Gemini that I've never tried out. I don't even know if that has a hub world or not. But I will say, Banjo-Tooie, it has a hub world that's really massive, and I wouldn't say it's bad, but I would say it is not nearly as memorable or fun as Banjo-Kazooie. So that one, maybe.
Okay.
But I think now talking about the kind of the main event of hub worlds, and that is a game that just recently came out called Hades. And I know Keith is just the ultimate Hades master at this point.
Oh, I wouldn't do. Whoa! Don't put that.
Well,
don't put that evil on me, boy.
Those are big words, but
yeah,
I would say
I've played a lot of Hades.
I would say it is your newest obsession, and
yes.
It is quite an awesome game. So I've played quite a fair bit, but I've yet to actually complete a run. I've gotten as far as the centaur dude in Elysium. So I'm working.
Okay. You're there. You have a couple hurdles to jump still.
I still have plenty of like upgrades to get and stuff to kind of make it a little bit easier for me, which is another great concept. But for those who haven't played,
if it makes you feel better, it took me about 30 runs till I finally beat the game.
I don't know how many I'm on, but I'm probably somewhere in like the 20s or something like that. But for those who aren't familiar, Hades is a kind of like, I'd say it's like an isometric view, but it's kind of a mix between like Diablo and Binding of Isaac, if you've ever played those games. But essentially, you are the son of Hades, and you're trying to get out of, literally get out of hell and work your way up to get to be with the other Olympians or whatever. Is that what they're called?
Yes. The gods, we could say.
Yeah, the gods. And essentially it's kind of designed in a way that unless you are insane, you're not going to complete your first run. So when you fail, you go back to the hub area, which is the House of Hades, And, with all
It's got a lot of roguelike stuff in it
exactly.
where there's progression. Like, it's not just run based, there's overall progression that happens in
Exactly.
as well. So
You're
you get a
gathering
little stronger.
resources. You're gathering resources through each run, and that way you'll make yourself a little bit better. You upgrade some of your weapons. You get other abilities. You can choose different kind of like perks you want to have going into each run. So not only is it fun to revisit the hub world because you are making yourself more powerful, unlike other roguelikes like something like Binding of Isaac, where it's a blank slate every time and it doesn't get any easier. In Hades, not only are you making yourself more powerful, but there's actually a story that is really built around this, that each time you fail a run, you're actually getting a little bit more of the story and what's going on. And I think that is just, they really tied in the roguelike concept with a hub world and a story so well that it's kind of incredible. And it's amazing that I haven't seen this really done in such a way until now. And I just think it was such a genius thing to do. And Keith, I'll just let you spill your love for this game. I know you want to. And
well, I'll do it as far as the hub world, because I have a feeling there's a video coming out in probably about a month or so that we'll really gush about Hades there. But it's like you mentioned, in the hub world of Hades, it's something that, because it's run based, because no matter what you do, they know you're always going to end up back in that hub world. They trickle the story out that way through the characters that you meet in that hub world, whether it be like a positive interaction or a negative interaction. Even though the gameplay in Hades is so good, the story is low-key one of the best stories I've ever played in a video game, just because of the pace that they dull it out and these character relationships that you're building over time, and the fact that the story in this game is kind of whatever as far as the main plot goes of Zagreus trying to escape from hell, but the personalities are just so strong, and the character writing in that game, that's what you're going to this game for. The gameplay's awesome, and the character interactions are that much better. They're so much better than that. And just being able to slowly talk to them and have objectives of, okay, I'm in the hub world, I just finished my run, now I want to talk to this person. Or sometimes there's people that only show up if you meet certain conditions, so when you get there, you almost have an objective in that hub world to go and seek out that person. And then just being able to plan your next run and choose your weapons. It's really much like Mario 64. It's the thing that connects that game together and turns it into from a good experience to a great experience. Because if you just had if Hades was like a Binding of Isaac, where you're just dying and then going to your next run, then I think you wouldn't have the same experience. It's that thing that really connects it together and makes it so good. My God, do I love Hades. What a magical game that is.
Yeah, I just love that, like I said, the cohesiveness between the House of Hades and your actual run. So sometimes there's, the boss of the first world. Sometimes you'll see her just chilling at the House of Hades, and you'll talk about, something that happened.
Yeah, it's I beat you this time. I guess I'll have to try a little harder, that stuff, or you won't get me next time.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it that much cooler when, you run into them, even outside the hub world, running into them again in your run, and there's a new set of dialogue. So just always keeping things fresh, even though you're kind of essentially doing the same run over and over again, but there's always different the enemies and everything randomized. But it's incorporating the roguelike into a hub world so well in the continued story. It's masterful, and I have a feeling that people are going to try and mimic this formula. And I think it's just Like we said, it's kind of hard to think of a lot of modern hub worlds because it's really iconic to the 3D platformer. But here's a game that comes out totally different than a 3D platformer and does the hub world concept in just a absolutely masterful way.
And it's just scale too. Like at the time of this recording, I'm about 130 runs into Hades, and I'm still getting new story. Like the fact that I've put that many hours into that game and I'm still getting new things to do and see in that hub world, that's what makes it so good.
Yeah, and it's smart because it doesn't like beat you over the head with story for long periods of time. You kind of get like a drip feed in between your runs, which I think is just like, it works perfectly well for the type of game that it is. So Hades, definitely the best example of a modern hub world.
Mm-hmm.
And then
without a doubt,
one other game I think that you had pointed out that you wanted to mention. I'm curious how, in what way you think of it, but World of Warcraft you mentioned.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I know we got like Orgrimmar and Stormwind, but definitely expand on why you think it makes a good hub world. I assume those might be ones you mentioned, but there's definitely other examples as well in that game.
Yeah, because every expansion in World of Warcraft has kind of had that major city, that hub that you go to like in your downtime in that game. And when I think of modern hub worlds, with the exception of things like Hades, like this is what I think of. The major cities in an MMO. I just use World of Warcraft because I think that's like the most recognizable examples. Your things like your Stormwinds or your Orgrimmars that have been there and have evolved along with the game over the last how many years that it's been around. I think it's on its 16th anniversary now. Yeah, it seems about right. Yeah, so just this world that has been evolving over 16 years and this space that has been evolving along with the characters. Like, to me, that is a great example of a modern hub world. It's not something like it has everything you need there as far as what you need when you're playing an MMO, but it's this constant, like, it's like the safety blanket of a space where no matter what you're doing in the game, no matter what your objective is, and if you're playing World of Warcraft, there's 1,000 things that could meet that role. And it's this common ground that not just you, but everybody goes back to constantly. Like that, if you've played World of Warcraft for any amount of time and you played Alliance and you say the words trade district, you know exactly what that looks like. If you say the space outside of Grommamosh Hold, you know exactly what that looks like. And that's cool. That's a hub world that's like, just if you spent any time in it, it's something that becomes recognizable and, dare I say, iconic.
Yeah, there's definitely a give and a take to that in an MMO, because some might say that hub worlds in World of Warcraft in particular might have got a little bit too OP and like having all these portals to warp everywhere, so much so that people only spend their time there and not enough out in the world to kind of make the rest of the game feel lively.
But I think that's okay, because it's a place that you can go to get you to your objective, because there's a lot of objectives in a game like that. And if you're making it inconvenient just for the sake of quote unquote having a lively world, then I think that's a detriment to the player experience, where you need something that's like, this is the hub, this is where I'm going, this is where I feel
it's
good.
A retail versus classic debate, really.
Yeah,
classic did a good job of, hey, yeah, Orgrimmar is still the place you want to go spend a lot of time, but there's also a lot of reasons to be in other areas of the map. Whereas the newer games, it's like you can do everything. You can do almost everything aside from level in the major city of that respective expansion. But I think there's a give and a take there.
For sure.
So lastly, I did want to just kind of scroll through a list of the top 10 hub worlds on a list I pulled up from blockfort.com. So I'll bring it up here, and we can just quickly run through these and see if there's any of these games you've played, and if you have any experiences with it.
All right.
So number 10, they had Sanctuary from Borderlands 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a thing in an MMO where that is the place you go in between your missions. It's all
Nice.
right.
Yeah, I've only played the first Borderlands, so I I don't really recall how they handled that in that game. But um, moving on, we did have Psychonauts is a game I've been meaning to play, but
I
have
haven't
not
played
played.
Psychonauts either.
But they have the Whispering Rock Psychic Summer Camp, which sounds really cool. And this is a game I've heard it's so charming, and I have to get to that at some point. Splatoon, they have Inkopolis Plaza, another game on my to play list.
Yeah, I haven't played any of these either.
Yeah, you mentioned the Nexus from Demon Souls. Now, this is one I'm looking forward to in the PlayStation 5 remake whenever I get to that. I feel like I'm leaning towards just skipping the original and playing the remake whenever I happen to get
as well
my hands.
At this point,
Yeah,
especially
it
if
looks
it's
so
good.
much better that I might as well wait. Again, previously mentioned Timber Island from Diddy Kong Racing. Then Mother Base, Metal Gear Solid 5. The Tower from Destiny, a game I have not had a chance to play.
That's a good. It's very much like Stormwind and Orgrimmar, where it's the hub for an MMO.
Nice. And then, so Monster Hunter World Asteria. I don't know if you played.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, same thing.
This is place number 3 on their top 10 list. Would you rank it anywhere near that?
I mean, no, I guess. In the way that I think that Monster Hunter World is one of the best games of last generation, but it's just the place you go in between your missions. Unless that's the Iceborne one, because I never played the Iceborne expansion. But if it's the main hub that was in like the base game, like, okay, cool, that's the place that I went to do my cooking and get my weekly quests, and it was wood and it was fun, but okay, I'd rather it's the place, like, I'd rather be out on hunts. That was just the time in between my hunts. I never really thought too big of it.
Yeah, maybe they just really like the aesthetics. They say beautiful vistas and spectacular views. So
yeah, I guess
they're an aesthetic person. Number 2, we got Peach's Castle. Nothing. I don't think anything
the OG
more needs to be said. And then they did put Gruntilda's Lair at number 1. So it's nice to get some affirmation, as I think Gruntilda's Lair is definitely up there as one of the best hub worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Again, I'd like to plug your video because you did a great in-depth dive of just how great that hub world is over on your YouTube channel at gameessays.com.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely check it out. I go into, like, as Keith said, a lot more depth. But that's going to really do it for our discussion on hub worlds for today. But
now I'm going to go play some more Hades. I need a few runs.
Yes.
I have one more goal to do in that game, and it is so freaking hard that I can't do it, and I just need to keep plugging away at it. And it's going to kill me until
complete
I
a run, man.
it.
That's all I want to do. I'm sure I'll want to keep playing more after I do, but right now it's, hey, can I just complete a run?
It is one of those things where once you beat your first run, the true Hades begins.
That's when the real game starts.
Mm-hmm. I hate that cliche so much, but it is
once
accurate.
You get 60 hours in, that's when the real game starts.
Yeah, that's when you really get to playing.
But if you want to continue the conversation, definitely head over to our Discord channel. That's acasttothepast.com/Discord. We talk about not just video games, but food or many other things, wrestling. But yeah, definitely continue the conversation there, or leave a comment, or hit us up on Twitter at acasttothepast. Let us know what your favorite hub worlds were. Were there any that we didn't mention that, are sorely needing of a mention, and why you enjoy it? Definitely let us know. Like I said, a lot of great conversations, great time on the Discord. We're building a really fun community there. So we'd love to have, that family continue to grow. But otherwise, I think that's gonna do it for this episode. And
let's go back to the hub world and regroup, and then jump in the painting for our next episode.
Yeah, for another edition of A Cast
to the
Past. It feels weird to say past. It just always feels weird.
I know. How many of these 2-man episodes have we done? And it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.